All right, everybody. We'll get started here in about, just give people another 15, 20 seconds to hop in. All right, cool. So if there's any questions, you could throw it in the Q&A, chat, or whatever as we're going through. I'm going to go ahead and go through because we have a lot of stuff to get through in a short amount of time. But this is going to be focused like it's almost like a working session sort of thing, except, knowing I can't see you guys and you can't raise your hands just in the beginning here. But it'll be pretty informal in the sense of how we're going to go through it. There's a bunch of steps that we'll take and try to cover some of the nuances. All right. So today we're going to go through the item plan module forecast function. We're going to be forecasting a core product, which most might be familiar with. That's been the tried and true forecasting function we've had. We're going to be going with forecasting a core product with stock outages. It's not going to solve every issue, but there's some ways to do that. Current season products, maybe doesn't have any history, just started selling in the last quarter. Brand new product coming from your assortment plan, and then some of the other functions that we do for predetermined size curves and forecasting with the discount, which is really a great way to increase your turns, right? So we'll go through all of these metrics. Here's some of the new forecasting functions that we've added. And for those who don't know what item plan really is, it's I mean, you do, but it's the nuts and bolts, right? It has everything down to the lowest level. It's the knowledge base. You can get a ton of reporting out of there because we're capturing all your actuals. And you can slice and dice a bunch of the information and the views to fit to what you want to look at and how you want to make decisions. In the last 4 to 5 months, we've added these guys in here. The like for like will help you use other styles, other classifications, other groupings. Size spread will help you for those SKU intensive pieces, and the discount calculation would get you to be able to add lifts and percent off of products as you're going through. And obviously you can use all these in combination, which is great. So pretty much just went through this, but basically like for like the ability to base seasonal trends on other items, size spread, too granular sometimes when you're doing that size spread. You could be not selling a certain size for a couple of weeks, and that could be normal. So then we don't want to forecast no units behind it. Forecasting using current discount rate or manual, choosing an option, really great here. You can right now put in a discount rate, get a unit, put in a unit lift, and only for a specific time frame that you're forecasting for. This will be growing in advancements as we go. We're building more and more into this. We actually have one that in a testing environment now, which reads right to your merchandise plan modules discount rates. But it would be also great to have these have profiles. So you can say like, hey, my women's knits, when I take a 40% discount, my first week spikes up by 2x, and then I go down to about 0.9 of that, and then it slowly gets back onto the cycle. So a lot of conversation about that as well. All right, well, we're not going to do Q&A right now, but what we'll go do is right into the module. So I'm right into our item plan, and I'm in my section here for this particular webinar with all the views and by. So I like to step out my views. You guys, just easy way to coordinate. Everyone can do it their own way. That's what I love about Toolio. Doesn't have to follow any particular pattern. But before I kick off forecasting a core product, I hear a lot when on calls and in sales meetings, like what's the right way to do it when this happens? And I wish I had a definite answer for that. But the truth is, there's so many different variables and nuances that can happen. Um, and you can spend so much time analyzing, dissecting, and everything, and then an outside variable can throw it a little bit off. So just keep in mind that as we go through this, our job as planners is to make sure we are prepared for those changes as well. So we want to make sure we have the right strategies, um, so that we can chase our opportunities and mitigate any risk. Having visibility and the ability to react quick, to be proactive, is a big deal for inventory management and our product mix shifts. And Toolio makes all of that easy because it is a system, sure, but it can be manipulated just as easy as your spreadsheets in here. So right now I want to do a forecast on an item here. We can pick any particular item. Let's start with this guy. My product 1826. And just to prove that it works here, get rid of my data here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead, and if I check off the items, you don't have to do one item at a time. You can do as many as you need. But for simplicity and so we can follow what's going on here, I'm going to override my defaults. Since this is core, I have history, I have my current trend. I'm going to be using the sales history method, my trailing 52 weeks, 1 week rolling average is fairly consistent. And then instead of division, I'm actually going to be using the style name and the actual color. I could go down to lower, but like I said, I'd rather use the spread of the sizing in there. I can base it off my last 4 weeks. I think that's good enough for this particular style. And the reason why I think that's good enough is because when you're doing core, you're forecasting more frequently, at least once a month, some places twice a month, right? Depending on your growth and your shifts. So you have a little bit more flexibility to be off because you're constantly recalibrating what the forecast is and therefore recalibrating what the receipt need is. So I'm going to go ahead and forecast. Right. If I scroll down to that style again, you can see within the first 4 weeks here, I did, what was it, 459 units I sold versus last year, 423. So on average, that build is 8.5%. And then what that's doing is it applying it to the future go forward. So you can see we have all the forecast through based on what I have in the view. So you can choose your own time frame, your customization, you can put in your own time frame. I use a lot of the relative in here, so you can do like this week and go forward. You could do last 4 weeks and go forward, and then custom where you can say like last 8 weeks or 12 weeks. So that's core. That's the easy one. So right now, even just generating receipts on that would be super easy just to show. I'm going to do it for week 29 going forward. Like I said, I like to do this every 2 weeks to make sure that my core is in there. My lead time is about 18 weeks. My safety stock, I always want to have about 7 weeks supply on hand. And I'm going to flow my on order to receipts. That's my actual purchase orders. Going into my receipt line, override any existing receipt plans that I may have been playing around with that have not been written up into POs. And I'm going to constrain sales if I don't have the inventory to actually support it. And as that generates, see here from the starting point of my first forecast, week 29. I have to go out to week 47 before I can start forecasting. And then that is filling me in to get me my 7 weeks of supply forward looking, and every other 2 weeks. So now I have a open to buy of what I have to place. It shows up in the open to buy line here, as well as the receipts line, but there's no on order for this far out. So I'd have to place these in a purchase order. There's also views in here. You can take this actual view and chop it up to be a report that would show you, just give me everything I have to place orders on. And again, probably should have said this to start with, these are, each style here has its own little open to buy metrics in here, meaning, merch plan from BOP through sales, receipts. You could add returns in here. I'm not showing every single metric, obviously, and any other metric you would need to do your business. But again, it's all flexible. My idea of going through this is that most of you have some knowledge base on what Toolio and item plan is. These are a little bit more advanced forecasting features than the 101 that we just went through. All right, I'm going to move on from that one, and now I'm going to start going through forecasting a core product that may have some stock outages. So let's say I have one of those years where I'm not able to keep certain items in stock, many different reasons. We've had supply chain issues. We have spikes in sales. We have new channels that buy our stuff and suck up our inventory. There's a plethora of meetings. So I want to forecast my items based on, and let's just, for this particular case, I'm going to say my whole history of everything, and I'm just kind of a brand new category in here, and I don't have a ton to judge it off of. So, but I did use my merchandise plan module, so I know my overall purchases. I mean, my overall trend. So I'm going to go ahead and take my, let's go with this black one here. I'm going to run a forecast and override. So again, I can't use my history. There's not good enough. And by the way, if you ever wanted to check what your history was, and because it looks okay here, there's reports you can build in here. And by the way, this view is derived right off of the forecasting view. It's not like you need someone to code. It's literally plugging in, and pulling out the metrics you need and putting in the metrics you don't want, or you do want, sorry. And so I'm looking at week 11 of 2020 all the way through week 23 of 2022. Obviously, I'm adjusting this, but I'm just trying to see where I had holes in stock for this particular style. We're going to pretend this total eclipse says black here, and I can go through and see that I have no sales until I get into week 9 of 2022. So I can expand. I have my product. I can go to my color. I could add any attribute I want in my group buys. And here's my size that I had. I only have one size for my demo data, but you get the point. You would be able to see if you had stock outages by size. We will be adding more features to identify this even easier, but you're already doing this in Excel on the side using a data platform probably, or some Excel reports that you're linking together. In the meantime, you can do that right here in Toolio without having to leave the tool and come up with those numbers. So I know that I had only this amount of history, so that's why I have to use my merch plan when I'm doing my forecast here. So that being said, I can I know that this is a core item and I want to use my merch plan. Let's see if I got it up here. Oh, good. So what I've done is I've looked through all those pieces. I've come up to what would be the ideal plan for the go forward. So if I look in my gross sales ticket here, I have a plan now for my core versus seasonal. So I can do that with the excuse me 1 second. Okay, sorry. I have my core, my seasonal, so now I can actually plan this out, be like, all right, I know where my core should have been. I can use that seasonality. So that's what I'm going to use in jumping off point for my merchandise plan. So I'm going to go ahead and forecast off merchandise plan. I'm using the same as target. So I want to use my forward looking weeks here, week 29 through 26 of 2023. I'm using the plan. The seasonality groups, now I can put in my division, department, class, and my seasonality, because I want to make sure that it's looking at my women's clothing, it's for core. And I can go ahead and forecast that. So now what you'll see is, based on what this is doing, is I must have had some bad inventory, like I said, so it's taking my current trend of what I'm currently looking at. It's applying that, what is this percentage to my overall merch plan for this category in seasonal? And then applying that to the future plans. So pretend this LY is blank, it has nothing to do with last year. So it's looking at my plan going forward and it's applying that in here. And so those are the numbers I'm getting. So now I'm getting back on track to my normal trend. So that's how you can use the trend you're building in your merch plan. Really good for when you're having a big growth year and you've got these top line numbers that you've worked hard on trying to figure out how to get to them. All right. And again, that is used quite a bit when you're starting out with new categories, or infancy stage of the company, or just overall you don't get to plan at the style color level all that often. So using your overall trends, and I bet you can find a level in your merchandise plan where you'll see your builds and your curve kind of mimic this year over last year, kind of have some kind of similarities, which would be the best way to go about it. And like I said, you can get it wrong for sure, but the more frequent you do it, right, and the more times I'm running my forecast or my generate receipts, I can course correct anything that's in here. So I'm not chasing into such big numbers, and I don't have to place all these POs at once. All right, cool. So now we're going to do a like for like. Now this is part using the newer function in here, or a feature of this. So I'm picking my sales history. I want to do my trailing 52 weeks. And I'm not, again, comfortable with my history of this particular color. So I'm going to use like for like. So when you click on like for like, now it brings you to a slightly different menu where you can pick the actual item you wanted to look at. So I'm going to go to products. I spelled that right. And then I'm going to add in the color of blue. Okay, so now I'm basing the trend off of the blue. Now, before we run that, my black, as you can see, probably, yeah, in the shaded area here, my black SKU normally sells more than, almost 3x, 2.5x better than my blue. It's not using blue to generate your order. It's using the seasonality. So it's still going to be using the trend I'm using here, the last 4 weeks, in comparison to what my blue is doing. So I'm going to go ahead and forecast that. Now you can see that I have my forecast in going forward, and it's still at that ratio of what I was saying prior. but it's based off of the curve of the blade. So really impactful there. And just, to reiterate, you don't have to do it at a particular style color. You don't have to do it one at a time. You could even do like for like if you have what I always, there's color changes all the time, which we'll be doing next actually, but like total eclipse could be the new navy. So you can say replace the navy. I'm replacing my navy. So now I'm going to use the trends for my navy to drive my total eclipse colors. All right. And so now I'm going to go through a more of a traditional style. This is right here, sorry. So I have my traditional method. Now, I'm not going to get too crazy into this, deep into this anyway. I did want to show you for people who, say I had so many different variables that I really don't want to do all the forecasting function, even though it's a great starting off point if you just ran it and then did your tweaks. Here's a view that you can do right within item plan 2 when you want to do it manually, or similar to how you're doing it in Excel. So I have this product here. I have no history on it from last year, so I don't want to use that. I have a hole in February, so I don't have a good faith on the trend I'm in. So what I'm going to do is, and let's just say my merch plan, I don't have a good seasonality curve that I can use from there, even my overall. So what I could do is do how we do it in Excel, like a more traditional method. And I'm only showing this to show you the flexibility within this tool. It's not my recommendation. I would always start with at least having it spit out a forecast. So I'm going to, first off, I got to find out when did I actually start selling this guy. So I can change the months to weeks. And then what I'm going to try to do is figure out my average selling per week. Right. So, all right, I didn't start selling it until week 9 of 2022. My gross sales units. And I need to get a run rate of how it was. So it looks like I have some good weeks here. So let's just use an average of, I might not even want to use week 9 because it may have come in midweek. So I'll pick a week starting there, and I got like, let's say 160 units. So I go to my forecast week, and I can literally, let's delete out all this stuff so you don't have to see that. Sorry, I have a lot of things open right now. All right, cool. Time group, week, month. Now, I don't know, so we don't have to sit here and wait. Good. So I'm going to put in my 160 here, and now I need a way to get it to blow out forward. So like I said, manually I went in and I figured out a select group of things. You can use your Excel sheets that you say, this is my normal build during these times. For me, I used, again, I'm not saying that you always have to go back to merch plan, but I'm using a filter where I picked out, has none of these pieces because they all have a separate thing, and I did women's clothing. So now I can literally take my builds, and again, don't worry about this being from merchandise plan. I'm going to use my last year because I know that's my more consistent. We'll go through week 52 here. I'm going to go ahead and paste. Oops. About that. Go from week 30 because I already plugged in my week. I already plugged in my week 29. And I'm going to go ahead and paste that in. Now it's giving me, based on that seasonality, a plan. The next thing you'd want to do is, because we're doing this manually, we're not having the function do it, you'd have to plug in all of your AIRs, any input, your discount rates, your AIRs, your AUC, so that it all flows through. I'm going to use my average here is about 5%. And then the same thing with the cost, making sure I'm using my most accurate cost. And again, I'm just only showing you this because whatever you're doing in Excel, you could do in here with these kind of trends. So I'm pasting that in as well. And the good news is, now that I'm done with my sales in here, I can hit save, I can generate inventory. But I could also still just now run the generate receipts function because I have a sales plan in there. And I can I can still use all my receipts knowledge here. So I know I'm going to be doing my order cycle for this particular one. Let's say it's every 4 weeks. I have a lead time of maybe 16, and I want to have about 9 weeks of supply at any given time. And then I can go ahead and generate receipts, and it's going to spit out my receipt plan. So now I don't have to go in and do that extra step manually as well. So it's still a huge time savings in this. You can see if I go down to my receipts section, I mean, this is a pretty, I put, everything but the kitchen sink into this view because I wanted it to look like an open to buy. And just to show where the receipts are popping up here, and we're in good shape. All right, so that's like a traditional thing. So I want to move on from that, but again, how you can flow this. And then there's going to be people who want to do it at like, hey, I just want to do this at a collection level because I really like that idea to get me going. And then as I start selling, I'll be using more of the features. Well, that's great. And you can also do that by just a little offset of that. Let me go to, sorry. This is an out of the box view as well, where you can really make it look like your merge plan module. This one in the meantime. You can close this one. Okay, so here's the out of the box view. So now it looks like your typical merchandise plan. You have your BOP, your sales, your receipts. But let's say you did that methodology here on a particular item, which is fine. And then within your percent of totals, you can zoom into that and have that level down. So I'm just going to percent out my total buy. Based on some selling facts, I know that this is my number one, or you can do it based off of how it was bought or how you want to buy it. You can plan by penetration as well. So just super flexible on that standpoint. Okay, I'm going to move on. It's already halfway through, but we're going to make it, I promise. Current season product. So here I'm going to go into back into this view. Now what I want to do is take a look at my total eclipse color. So I open this up for quite a bit just so we can demonstrate what's going on here. You can see that I have had no sales last year. I have no sales all the way up through March, but I have a pretty good trend and I have a decent amount of tight inventory, right? I'm turning it every week, 3 weeks of supply. And I want to now trend this out. So this is, again, I would use my like for like scenario. Uh, so it's a new item, it's a new color, but I can base it off other things. And I want to make sure that I have the right inventory going forward. And I didn't have a forecast in there before, but we like the way it's actually doing better than blue, not as great as our black, and we may want to turn this into a core item. I'm going to go ahead and forecast again. By the way, you could save all these as profiles, and once you set them up, just use defaults. I'm just showing you the work behind it. And again, like for like, I can do my style name. Add my color. Now what I'm going to do is I'm not sure exactly where this is landing. So instead of just picking one particular color, I'm going to go ahead and do it off of both. So just imagine that with, when you have 50 SKUs, you can still base it off a ton of them. In here, I'm good with that. And my trend, I don't want to use the last 4 weeks. I'm actually going to be using the last 8 weeks or the last 12 weeks here, or I can just take that first initial block, maybe the first 4 weeks it launched. So it was like March week 5, which was week 9 total. So you can do all that stuff where you can use the trends from a particular range. It doesn't have to be always leading up to your first forecast. All right, so let's do it in the last 8 weeks. And now I have a forecast based off of those 2 styles, seasonality, but it's still using how this item is compared to those. So I have no history. There's nothing in here for on order just yet, but I have go forward. I have on order. It's not my receipts. I can calculate and now run my generate receipts, or just if I don't even want to do a receipt, I can just run flow on order. But I wanted to show you when you're not buying something so frequently, how I use generate receipts. So let's say now my order cycle for most markets, right? You got like every 13 weeks you're buying something. My lead time, I wish it was 13 weeks. We all like to think that, but it's growing, and even 18 is way thin. And my safety stock is 13. So now I'm going to go ahead and run this, generate this. So now I only want to place 1 PO. I'm happy with how it's been performing this year, but I'm going to place 1 more for the next buy that's due, but I don't want to have to do this every single week. So based on that, you can set it. My 18 weeks out tells me to get 2,500 units here. And then you can see my next buy is, again, 13 weeks from that. And that's a fill-in to get me back to my weeks of supply. So you don't have to do it on just for core kind of styling or always repeating. You can do it just to get like, hey, I just want 13 weeks worth of units. What would that be? All right. And now I'm going to forecast a brand new product. And here, I'm going to switch this guy to X. Yeah. I refreshed on me. Sorry about that. This. So I can come into my assortment plan because I buy my newness in assortment, right? As part of the purchasing process. I'm not really handling it yet in item plan. It's really as it comes. So it's my outline of how I want to do my Q1 of 2023 buys. And I can come in here and look at my men's clothing, and I have this new Blake jacket in clear color that I need to get into an item plan. I want to flow it out and see how it does impact my business. So I have my average weeks of supply, my plan weeks, and I did all the work. So the first step is just to show you in here, I have clear in my forecast. I'm set on now my view. I'm looking at 2023 spring, because that's where I'm kind of bringing it from. And I'm only looking at that particular season. And I already have black forecast out. So now I'm going to go ahead and say, here's my clear. Let me just make sure that I am good with my spreads. You could have channel spreads as well. I like the color. The size breakdown is going well. So now I'm going to generate an item plan. Lets me know I successfully did it. Let's see. So if we go back into here and I go into clear, of course, I will have to refresh. And now I have that plan by week with all the growth factors I had in there into my item plan with my buy. But what I don't like is it's fairly flat. By fairly, I mean exactly flat. So what I'm going to do is use another method here to give it some seasonality similar to what I have in my black jacket. So I'm going to go ahead and run a forecast again. Let's take a look at, this is going to be sort of irrelevant anyway. So, but the seasonality, I'm putting it that. It's for the like for like. And here I go. I'm going to go into well, it's not irrelevant because it's going to be using my like for likes history. Sorry about that. And I'm going to go Blake jacket. And then let me go to my color. Black. Now, instead of using the trend, right, and this has never had sales, it doesn't have any sales. I have to specifically use that, what I put in my AP buy, those 58 units per week, which I said I was going to do. I'm going to use something called spread current in my volume trend. So now it's going to take a look at the Blake jacket in black, looking how that seasonality went, and it's going to spread it across the weeks just like that for clear. And as you can see, with 58 turned 45, then I have that bump up in end of February, end of March, going into March, because everyone likes to look cool in their black jacket in the springtime, all the way through. So it changes it based off of the comp style you're doing. And again, it brought in your receipts. You can now say, all right, that was a great initial receipt. One thing is I will generate an inventory for here, just so I can see that. Looks like I'm going to have to buy some more black as well. Oops. I don't have the inventory. But I can now see that, all right, so that's good for 13 weeks. It looks like it gets me through, but I'm going to put in a chase order where you can add on to those purchase orders as need be. Okay, we're at 240. Moving on to the next piece using size curves. This is still, we're going to stay on the same sort of item here, what we just submitted. Okay, and now I have, all I did was add in my group buys my size. So my black comes in small, medium, large, extra large, and extra, extra large. The difference here is that we know based on our business that our lighter colors, especially our clears, do much better in the smaller sizes. So in order to really capitalize on that, we introduced an extra small. And there was no extra small, so it gave it 0 units into the forecast. So now what I can do is do the same forecast I just did. We'll do the spread current. And now this is where I'm going to be using my size spread. So I can't use my Blake because I'm actually having extra small in there. So I'm going to use my overall tops. And again, you can save your size spreads. You can create as many size spreads as you need. I'm pretending this is my jacket, light colored jackets size spread that I can use. So I'm going to go ahead and forecast that. And then what it's going to do is it's going to take that forecast I had in there or what generated, and it's going to now remix it based on the percents I had by size. And you can see here, that's exactly what it did. The good news about that is, jackets, this may not be the most usual case, but when thinking about footwear, right? So, or just skew intensive areas where you have a lot of sizes, not everything is going to be, like I said, you may want to take a bigger time frame to get what's the best scale for you to look at that over 3 months or something and say, all right, even though I may not sell all these every week, I want to make sure that I have the inventory to support that they would be at this scale. So think of it that way. It's just a way to make sure that you're covered on all your sizing. And then as you get into doors, you want to make sure you have your minimum display quantities of a 11222211, on the floor without skipping a size or something like that. All right. And now the last piece here we'll go through is discount planning. No one likes to take discounts, but the necessary evil at times. Some discounts aren't bad, right? When you're doing on the order, on average, you're doing 5, 10, 15%, not a big deal. But when you're getting close to that, oh, I have too much inventory. I really need to think of a way to get through these goods and I don't have another option. I'm going to have to do some sort of promo or discount. So here I have an item where I'm starting the week with about 524 units. I'm only selling about, in the past, if I look, on 80 units a week. So my weeks of supply are going to be too high because I want this out by week 31 because I have light blue coming in that's going to try to replace this. So how can I get through this inventory? So that's where we are going to be using our discount method here. I can go ahead and I can use any seasonality, any method I want up here, or just for time savings, I'm going to, sorry. Okay, there we go. Opening up back and forth to too many views here. So I'm using it off the style and the color. I don't want, I'll use the last 4 weeks, fine. But now I need to get that lift. So I'm going to have to take a certain percentage off that I get a lift on. So I want to get a 60% lift in here in units to just try to help move through it. And to do that, I know by looking at some of the reporting I've built in here, if I take a 30% markdown, I can get close to that. So I'm going to go in here to default the discount calculation, and I'm going to pick my manual rate, my discount rate. Let's put it at, I said 30, right? Oops. I want that, again, these will hopefully be profiled and we're going to get some automation to come up with these lists for you as well. So, and I don't need to do it through all of week 36. I just want to run it from now through week 31 and see what that does. But my forecast for everything else will go back to the way it was. And the reason why I'm showing you on this giant view is just so we can see what it does to the pricing and all that fun stuff. So here I go from selling 80 to about 138 to 139, and just to see what that impact is on inventory before I generate receipts. I can see I'm not quite out by week 31, but I'm doing pretty good, and I'm out by week 32. So here's my lift in units over that time frame I did that, and then you can see over here it goes back, sorry, here, week 32, it goes back down to the normal trend. As you can see, it went from 173 to 108. Last year, it was, it's taking that build, what it would have been had you not had that discount on there and that lift, and it puts it through the regular ringer. And you can also see, all right, well, here's my AIR. Not very meaningful when I'm doing heavy discounts like this, but I can see what that impact is for those weeks on my discounts here. Like I said, this is where I put those weeks in. I can see what my margin impact would be. Not great, obviously. I'm taking a 60% IMU item, which didn't start out very high, and I'm bringing it down to about a 43%. So I saved this in a new scenario here so that I didn't mess up what I had in the other plan. And what I wanted to do is see, what does this impact overall to this business? So I can go into my IP to MP and use different views in here to kind of see what that does. And I can see that overall in my knits clothing, I have my gross margin. We'll skip to the good parts here. In my MP, I said I'm going to be floating around a 58. In my discount review, which is the thing I just ran, that impact of that style took it down by 200 and some odd basis points. And my regular view, where I didn't run the discount, it's at a 57. So I was always a little off here between my merch plan and item plan, but now I can tell my finance team, like, we're going to take a hit of about 200 basis points if we take this discount, but we get clean on our inventory. So again, just the functions, it's great that all the buttons and clicking, but how they meld into everything else and make sure that you're linking up and you're tying all your modules together is the really important piece about this. So we are now done with all the forecast functions I wanted to go through. Sorry, I'm stuttering sometimes. You guys make me nervous. You know how it is. Forecast. I wanted to show you where that discount is. This will have merchandise plan as well. And what you can do is actually pick, you don't have to pick the same scenarios. Let's say you're doing a discount at a top line level. You're doing your forecast at a lower level. You can choose, like, give me my discount of my total division, my total company, or total channel, and use that. So that will be really helpful. And that's actually in our staging right now. So that will be coming within the next couple of weeks, and more advancements on the forecasting function as well. So now I believe I'm supposed to show this, but questions and hopefully answers. Let's see here. Okay, so we have one open question here. What if discounts are temporary only for a few days and overlap weeks? For online, yes. This does happen, and you'd have to chop that up right now because we have it by week, to give you a good estimate. The other thing that we are working on is day level plans. So you'd be able to take certain metrics and see how that works to the day level. But usually, like what I think about is if I'm going to take a discount in a certain week, usually markdowns would happen on a either a Tuesday or a Thursday, depending on time of year. And you would say, like, regardless if it was that percentage on a whole week, since I can look at my comp information, um, knowing it started on a Thursday, what was my lift on an item that I took a markdown on that was a Thursday for my first week versus my second week. Right now, we blanket it across as a total, but it's really just to give a good estimate on what the margin hit would be. Is there any other questions? You could just throw it into the chat or the Q&A. Okay. Let's say you're planning a core style that has lots of history, but the color selling of that style varies. Like light versus dark. How are the sizes calculated? Well, yeah, so for this thing, if you have tons of history, that's fine. You can use, even longer time frames for your seasonality of 104 weeks as well. But for if you have, like you said, the lights versus darks sell differently, what it's going to be doing is when you pick it at that level of style color, it's going to say your dark size small and compare it to the overall, like if there's volume right now, compare it to your overall styles size small as a ratio, not saying to fit into that, but if you did 10 and your dark size small and you did 15 total in that, meaning 5 was left over for lights, it would be doing the 10 divided by the 15 and then applying that to all your forecasted. So it's still going to use that go forward in there. And as for a timeline for daily, we're starting on that. Yeah, we are looking for November, where we're going to be putting that out. Again, I don't know if it's going to be all the way down to discounting and markdown stuff, but for the initial launch and everything, yeah, daily will be there starting in November. If you're planning, use sales history trend at the style level. How does it apply the trend down to the SKU level? Yep. So yeah, and then does it take the last X weeks contribution to total and apply that to the forward total style units? Yes, that's what it's doing. So depending on the levels you pick in your forecast menu here, let me get to a better looking one. So if you did your seasonality at the style level, even it's going to, let's say this was not even blue, black, and total eclipse. I ran it at my style level. What it would do is take that percent of blue, black, and eclipse to the total and apply that for your go forward. That's where you may have to limit what time frame you're actually forecasting out through because of seasonal goods. And then it would apply that. If you pick down to style color level, it obviously would do it based off of the style and color individually, but then size would be broken out by what the trend was versus the overall seasonality you're comparing it to, and then blowing it out. So yeah, and then if you really, if you really wanted to, you can do a forecast down to the SKU level where it's looking at each SKU and each SKU's seasonality and using its own curve, but that can get a little too messy with especially a lot of sizes. So the forecast by size wouldn't be unique to how each style color sold in the past or based on the trend. It would just give you a blanket. No, it would be unique for each if you're not picking that. So if this was, if you're doing it to overall to your a particular color, you're selecting the colors. So they're still going to be running off of their own weight compared to whatever your comparable is. So if in the menu, if you're picking your seasonality, let's see. So if you're doing it off of a like for like and you're picking a different color group, it's still going to be doing how these relationships are to that color group. So each size is still going to be its own. It's not blanketing it. All right, we have 4 minutes left. These are good questions, by the way. You can even test that out, like if you wanted to, right? To figure out if it's using its own color and if its own penetration, and then just take it up a level or down a level as you feel needed for the seasonality. What I mean by that is in here, when you're picking your like for likes, maybe don't go so granular, or maybe in some places you want to go more granular. Like stripes versus prints may be very different than solids. So you may want to, group those together and do it as how they react to each other. Okay, cool. Well, we got 3 minutes left. I'm not going to force anyone for questions. There's a lot here, and it was, we go through it pretty fast, as these webinars are. I could talk about this stuff for hours, obviously, but there's help articles out there that you can have these snippets of each one we went through. Let's show you how to run those particular forecasts. So when it caught up, like if you weren't seeing, every metric and whatever was going in there, was more about putting through of all the different nuances and ways to go around it. Let's see, we have a couple more questions here. Similar question to forecasting at the style color level, and then how the forecast is determined by size. It's the same thing. So if you're doing style color level, it's using its own weight of size compared. So it's going to be taking how, if I did this one off of its own history at the style color level, it's going to be taking small, medium, large, extra large, and how that did versus during this time frame as it was ranked in penetration, and applying that going forward. It's not going to be looking at each size's history and trying to figure that out. That's the whole point of the seasonality leveling. Okay. When you're generating receipts at the style color level, how does it generate down to the SKU? That's the same answer. So it's going to be not spreading it. Well, it's not the same answer, it's different. So what it's going to be doing is filling into the need. So when I pick how many weeks of supply I want in here, it's going to make sure it's filling into that. So if you are running really thin on size extra large, it will put more of the buy into that extra large to get you to the goal of your weeks of supply. So that's, generate receipts is not part of the forecast function due to that. So what the generate receipts doing is now taking a look at each one of those components and saying how many receipts you need to do to hit that forecast. The beard's been here for a long time, probably about 16 years. I just haven't had time to trim it down. But thanks. And then let's see here. The forecast algorithm has to be more complex than just percent to total contribution or LY. No, yeah, it definitely is, because now it's not just using a percent to total. It's there is a volume, a trend volume, a trend weight, and a seasonality, right? So it's not just percent of totals, because all those numbers can be summed up differently. So the items I chose, it's using its own volume trend when I pick trend 4 weeks, but the seasonality is using whatever I'm grouping it by here, and so it's a relational piece to it. And then for the last year, for the weight it's comparing it to, it's looking as well at whatever you picked in your seasonality group, so what it was, but you can be picking that across 104 weeks, a specific year that you've found, and then also rolling average, because we know we have those ups and downs. I didn't speak too much to this, but basically what this is going to do is take away some of those random spikes or dips and kind of flatten it out, because, you know, like I said, week to week things change. You're not going to follow the exact same seasonality, so you can flatten it out that. So it's pretty complex, but what we're also working on is, and I've said this in previous webinars, is we're a demand metric, which, by the way, you can sort of take your sort of handle right now. You can do a forecast even for weeks that have actualized, just to see how the forecast checked out versus how you're actualizing. So if you wanted to do some tests that way, and then what we want to do is then take that demand plan that we're forecasting and figuring out, okay, this should have been the true demand, even though we didn't have all these other variables made it actualize like this, but now let's base our forecasting off of this true demand. All right, well, we're 2 minutes over, not so bad. I believe, right? Supposed to end at 3. So thanks for your time. Write in, you know, you have your customer success team is willing to point you in the right directions as well. And we'll be doing more of these as we go. You know, this is the first, like I said, everything's changed in the last 4 months on how you can do your forecasting. We're also adding forecasting to merchandise plan, so you'll see more and more coming down the pipe. All right. Thanks, everyone, for your time.